Hello everybody, I'm Hazel. Welcome back to my channel all about ice cream. This is the promised battle of the chocolate ice creams. It's not so much a battle of the chocolate ice creams as it is figuring out which chocolate supplier I'm going to be going with. Nobody voted in the poll, which is fair enough, nobody watches these videos. So I had to decide how I was going to do this. And what I've decided to do is talk briefly about chocolate and why I'm looking for particular things in a chocolate supplier. I'm going to make one of the ice creams on camera, but there are going to be three others. So it ends up being four, the four that you see here. And then at the end of it, I'm going to label them in such a way that I hopefully don't know which one is which, taste them, figure out which one I like the most, and that will be the place I get my chocolate from. So if I was a better YouTuber, what I would say is, oh, you can go and watch the chili chocolate video and provide a nice handy link to it on the screen. But I'm not a very good YouTuber, and people might not want to watch the chili chocolate video. It is exactly the same chocolate ice cream recipe, but I don't think it's fair to not include the recipe in the video itself, so that's why I'm still going to be making one of them. But first of all, where do we got up to with the history of chocolate? I'm trying to remember the chili chocolate video. So we've had it over from Mexico and into Europe via the Spanish and later Portuguese. So that was kind of 1500, 6th or 16th century. And then by the time these recipes are being written, chocolate is evolving. Chocolate is going from being solely a drink into being more of a food as well. But it hadn't quite got there. You don't get the creamy chocolate bars that we're used to until mid to late 1800s. I think it's 1860s that the first mass-produced one came out. I'll look up the exact date, but I'm pretty sure it's 1860s somewhere. So chocolate at the time that these recipes are being written, there's an interesting caveat to this, but mostly chocolate at the time these recipes are being written are based on what's known as cocoa liquor, which is where you take essentially the cocoa beans, grind them up, melt them, and produce a viscous liquid. Now, you can still do that. You can get cocoa nibs and do exactly the same thing, but you can also achieve something basically the same by using a very high percentage cocoa chocolate bar that doesn't have many other ingredients. So that was the first thing I was looking for in a chocolate supplier. No additional ingredients apart from cocoa butter, and to some extent sugar. When I was figuring out what recipes to use for all of these, I did actually formulate for all of them, but there's actually comparatively little chocolate in chocolate ice cream. That's why my mother doesn't like it. She doesn't think it tastes strong enough. I think it's fine. Other people think it's fine, but when I make it for her, I make it stronger. But because there's only 5% chocolate in the recipe, there wasn't actually enough sugar in any of these chocolate bars to make any difference, so the recipe itself stayed the same. What I was going to work out, what I intended to work out before filming and forgot to do, so I'll figure it out and put it up on the screen. How low percentage of cocoa can you go before you do need to change the formulation? It's obviously lower than, what's my lowest one, 80. It's obviously lower than 80% because 80% uses the same recipe and works out fine. So I'll work out exactly what number it is, put that up on the screen. Where was I at? Yes, so my first requirement was I wanted it to be very, very few other ingredients. Well, actually, no other ingredients, just cocoa butter, sugar. My second one is, for historical reasons, I wanted it to come from a Middle or South American origin. So chocolate is Mexican at its heart. It then spread a little bit north and south of there. Not much north, actually, mostly south of there, naturally. But it's the Europeans and the colonization process that took it around the world. So you don't get chocolate grown elsewhere. You've probably got West Indies, 1600s, maybe early 1700s. You've got the Dutch growing it in what we would now call Indonesia, late 1600s probably. Not grown in Africa, though, until 1800s, about 1820s. So Africa is a relatively late addition to the chocolate production of the world. But most of it at this time was probably still coming from the Middle and South American American areas. You weren't, yes, it was being grown in the West Indies, yes, it was being grown in Asia. They weren't the big markets until a little bit after these books were written, or at least the first of these books were written. The books I'm working from span about 70 years, maybe a bit more, maybe it's 80. It's 70 or 80. So there are changes going on in food production and the world history during that time. So by the time you get to the end of that, chocolate is very different. In fact, I suspect the latest one of these, this was my caveat, that chocolate was a cocoa liquor. I suspect actually the latest one, which was 1869, 67, late 1860s, may have actually been using something more like cocoa powder rather than chocolate in this form. The one in the middle is interesting because the way it's written sounds like they're doing the same, but cocoa powder wasn't really a thing at the time. So I wonder if that's just me being a little bit more pedantic about how it's written, dissolved versus melted. But anyway, I digress. So where did we got up to? Yes, so it was important to me that the beans came from Middle or South America, which all of these do. I've got 3 Ecuadors and a Belize. What was really interesting actually is when I was buying the Belize one, I've been to both of these shops. And I was trying out some of the chocolates in the Tosia ones, and I think it was either a 70 or an 80% cocoa that was also Belize. It was the same beans, but it tasted completely different. And I was talking to the man there, and I was saying, have you done anything different with this? And he went, no, it's been processed in exactly the same way. You'd think that you'd just get a bigger flavour of the 70%, but you don't. You get different flavour notes come through. And that's something really interesting about chocolate. We tend to think of chocolate as a homogeneous product. All of these taste a little bit different. And this is part of what I'm trying to figure out, as well as do they make good ice cream? How do they taste once they're in the ice cream? So what have we done? No added ingredients, Middle or South American origin. I also wanted there to be good ethics behind it. So I will never be able to get chocolate that is grown in the UK. You can't grow it in the UK. Chocolate only grows between sort of 20 degrees above and below the equator. We are way above that. So chocolate is coming from elsewhere. It's being shipped around the world. Chocolate has a not great history. It's got a lot of links with the slave trade, and slave labour was used to produce a lot of the chocolates throughout history, and to some extent still is. I'm not going to get up on a high horse about it and try and make people feel bad about where they're getting chocolate from, but there's child labour involved in this, there's underpaid workers, poor working conditions. I didn't want my chocolate to be part of that. So ideally what I'd have looked for and what I'd have had is people that are personally getting it direct from the farmers, the growers. That is difficult. I didn't find a single supplier who hit every single one of my requirements, because I also had, ideally I wanted it to be single origin, but that was the lowest of the requirements. But I didn't find a single supplier who could hit all of them. So what a lot of them do is there's one person in the middle. So people are farming it, growing it, they're selling it to one person, and then these people are buying it from them. Would I have liked it to have not had that middle step? Yes. But so many of them do. And if you are looking for the good companies, they are transparent about that being part of their process. They are also, you can look at the sustainability reports of these things. You can still check that the farmers are getting a fair price for the chocolate they're producing for the work they're doing. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted to make sure that what I was doing wasn't bad for anybody out there. And so I ended up with these 4. There were others. There's 2 in the background. So these 2 also got included in the initial selection. What was frustrating is they didn't come with any of things like how much fat they've got in them, how much sugar, and I know the 100% has no sugar, but I don't know the fat contents. So could I have made the chocolate with the chocolate ice cream with them? Yes, I think it would have been fine, but I wouldn't have known what I'd actually got out of it. And I do like to know that. So I ended up with these 2. There was also another one that I won't name, because, as I say, I went to these shops. They're not a million miles away from me. And there was another one I went to. And whilst I went to these ones and they were helpful, polite, another one was just so... You couldn't say they were rude, but they were very uninterested. They could tell, you could kind of get the impression, actually, we don't really want you in here. Which all I'd done is walk in to try and buy something that they didn't even have, by the way. They didn't stock the percentage I wanted. And I did think, oh, I could just buy it online. And then I thought, actually, I don't want to. I'd rather not deal with people like that. So it ended down to these two, Pump Street and Tozier. There is a range between 80 and 100. They are here in no particular order apart from alphabetical and then arranged by percentage. I'm going to be using this one in the chocolate I'm going to make on camera just because it is the first one here. But I'm going to end up using all of them. I will admit to some bias, the chocolate that I buy just to eat is actually not Middle or South American, it's from Haiti, and it's by these people. It was just the nicest one to me, but that is quite a low percentage. I wouldn't probably use that in ice cream. Comparatively low percentage, it's still 70, and I reckon 70 would probably still be fine, but we wanted 80 and above. Ideally I'd have had 85 and above, but they only do it in 10%, and I didn't want to chop them out entirely. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win the battle of which chocolate tastes nicest and works well in an ice cream. So let me just remove these ones, because they'll come back to me later. The other ones that I discounted, by the way, I still enjoy eating, just not using it in ice cream. And then, first of all, before we get to the chocolate, it doesn't feel very solid, that's because the battery's half popping out. There we go, that's better. Let's get the other ingredients in here. So this recipe is 50% single cream. I'm going to be making 750 grams of it. It's best to make it in a factor of 150 grams because it makes the eggs easier. There is a recipe for eggless chocolate ice cream as well that I have, but that's the one that uses the cocoa powder. I might make it one day. It's not my preferred way of making ice cream. I prefer the taste of this, but I'm not a fan of very punchy flavours. That is much more punchy. So what did I want? 50% of 750, 375. So it's going to be all of one pot because I get them in 250 millilitre pots. Just scrape all of that out. I think today might be the day that I don't need to go back into the drawer to get anything, because I was essentially miming what I was doing. The only thing I've not got out is a sieve. I don't often strain these mixtures before putting them into the fridge though, because I generally re-whisk and strain once I've re-whisked after they've chilled. So that is 251. Oh, that was a generous 250 millilitre pot. Cream isn't, so water is 1-to-1. 50 millilitres of water is the same as 50 grams of water. Cream isn't. So you can get weight variations in the same volumetric amount. I've said this before, I don't know why, but my single cream always seems so creamy. In some ways more so than the whipping cream, which has a higher butterfat percentage. I want 375 of this. I've got a little way to go yet. 50, 60, 75. I'm going to put that back in the fridge because I have so much cream in my fridge right now. Have I got enough cream? I must have. I worked this out before I ordered the cream. And then there's not much whipping cream in this. Yes, by the way, you will notice that I'm still doing the single cream whipping cream combination. I am still working on potentially reformulating some of them to have the, there's a word I'm trying to get, the half milk, half cream recipe instead, but I haven't figured that all out yet. And again, I'd ordered this cream before I found that. So what is it of whipping cream? It's 10% whipping cream, so only 75 grams of whipping cream. The reason there's so much single is that you end up with a bit of fat coming out of the ice cream, so you want to reduce the amount of fat coming from the bit of fat coming from the chocolate. So you want to reduce the fat coming from the cream. That's 70, and maybe a little bit more careful because I can't take this back out once it's in it with all mixed. 75. And again, just going to re-refrigerate that because that's not the last I will see of that pot. It's the last you'll see of that pot. And remember, my secret ingredient for chocolate ice cream, water, because again, if you add in an ingredient with a high amount of solid and fat, you are naturally reducing how much liquid there is in the recipe, so you need to add some to counteract that. So water is also at 10%, so 75 grams of water. $75.8, that was very pretty good. I worried that I'd gone a bit too heavy there. And then the chocolate. So chocolate, as I said earlier, only actually takes 5% of this recipe. I've made a complete mess of opening that. Look at that. That's like a wild animal got it. When I'm making this for my mother, what I generally do is I increase the chocolate to 10% and I reduce the sugar to 10. Sugar is normally 15 because she likes it more chocolatey. I don't. I like it at this level. So what do you want? 5%, so 37.5, and break it up into smallish bits. It just makes it a little bit easier to get the melting going. You don't need to go crazy. You don't need to bash it with a rolling pin or anything like that. Just smallest bits that your hands can manage. That's quite pretty. Just trying to catch it in the light there. There we go. We're up to 26, 28. We were 37.5, didn't we? One, just need to get a tiny bit more of this. Not too much more. 34, 37.34. I reckon that's going to be close enough. That was 85%. The best way to eat chocolate is to not chew it. You just put it on your tongue and let it melt. I've not done that with this one yet. So my apologies if you just hear me chewing away or just melting away in the background. So as I said, sugar comes into this at 15%, so 112.5. Yep. Now when I make something like just a cream base in the stand mixer, I tend to add the sugar gradually, but this is going to get whisked to within an inch of its life anyway, so I don't mind just adding this in straight to the mixture. 105, 110, 12.61, that's close enough. And then we come to the eggs. So egg yolk is at 10%. It works out as 1 medium egg yolk per 150 grams, which is why I say it's easiest to do this in factors of 150, because then you can just work out how many factors of 150 you have and add 1 egg per that. So as always, I save my whites for a later day. So for Christmas, Father Christmas bought me a freezer, a little mini chest freezer, which is why my storage problems have been fixed. So that is out in my garage, and I was moving some things over to it yesterday. and I moved an awful lot of egg whites. I had some that I got rid of because what I like to do now is I like to note what ice cream I got the egg white from and make like a macaroon that's in theme with that. But I didn't do that in the early days. That's one. So I had random egg whites. That was really nice chocolate. It's just finished melting. So I got rid of the random egg whites. But it still leaves me with a lot that I will one day make on here and show you. Oh, these are separating quite easily. I picked these eggs up this morning and I actually watched them being taken off of the little sorting machine. So I know that these ones are extremely fresh. I wonder if that makes them easier to split. I still don't know why they're sometimes easier to split than others. Not easier to split, easier to separate. We don't want to be easier to split. That's two. I generally save them in batches of 3. That's not going to work out perfectly because I'm going to end up with 20. There's going to be one batch that's just 2 egg whites. Three. Glass can go over there. Ow, that's sharp. Oh, that's very sharp. There we go. Make sure we don't get any of that shell in there. There we go. I do realise that this part is very boring for you because I've managed to do it off screen yet again. Let's see if I can move it in onto camera for the next one. I mean, it's not the most exciting thing to look at anyway, but at least it's something. Four, and then last one. If I put the glass there and come over to the side. Okay, dropped an egg. Excellent. This is why I bought spares. I needed 20, I bought 24. It's got a lot of albumin on it. There we go. It's quite satisfying when it all drops off. There we are, and that's number 5. I'm just going to pause a minute to clean up the egg that I just dropped. So you're going to see a little bit of a fade screen, and then we'll be back to make the custard. And then I'm back from the cleanup operation. Just going to move that egg out of the way. And that is everything in the ice cream. Let's just take off the cap lock. And then you want to whisk this until it creates a custard. So until it is coating the back of a spoon, which for once I have got out. That's often the thing I forget, or at least I always think I've done it and then can never find the spoon. So a little bit like the Friends and cappuccino with a K, constantly mix it, never let it settle. Some people freak out that I don't temper eggs. You don't need to. You're heating everything to the same temperature at the same time. It doesn't need temper and it will be fine. Just make sure you don't go too far. Otherwise you don't scramble it, but you end up partially cooking it. And it will froth, that's fine. The froth calms down. As the chocolate melts, it will go a brown colour as well. That's taking a little bit of time to happen. I've still got quite a lot of chocolate in there. I often find it's one of those things, once you've got it to that point, it tends to all happen within seconds. That'd be quite interesting to see, actually. Does it take some of these chocolates longer to melt than others? They've been kept in the same conditions, they go in at the same temperature. Let's quite a bit in there. Start to feel less of it now. A tiny bit left, but not much. See what I mean? It took a couple of minutes to get to this stage, and now within 10 or 15 seconds, it's kind of all gone. So I suspect that's probably fairly close. Comes back to my own rule there, I've never let it settle. Bring the jug down. I suspect that's fairly close. So let's just get it to coat the back of the spoon. Can I draw a line in it? Yes, I can. Perfect. You don't want to go too far. A little tiny final whisk, and then just going to pour it into my jug. Oh, and partially over the side. Oh, it hadn't quite melted. Just whisk it as I'm pouring it. It's got a bit of residual heat that I think will do that. Yeah, that's done that. That's fine. Yeah, it's made a bit of a mess. Never mind. Just wipe the space of that and turn that off so we don't cook it onto the saucepan. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to make 2 of the ice creams today, and then churn those tomorrow, and then make the other 2 mixtures tomorrow and churn those the day after. So put this in the fridge. So I would have ended up with slightly less than 750 millilitres, but that's okay. There's only so much chocolate ice cream I need. Oh, where am I going to put this? I've still got lots of things in my fridge from Christmas, including my tins of Coke. Okay, if I move that over there. I'm going to need to do a reshuffle to get 2 jugs in here, but that's at least got me the 1 jug for now. So I'm going to make the other ice creams off camera because they all follow this recipe and method. There's nothing different apart from the chocolate that I'm putting in them. So the next time I see you, I may show you the churning of the same one. I may show you the churning of a different one. Again, same method, doesn't really make a difference. But next time I see you will be some form of re-whisking, sieving and churning. It's the next morning. The ice cream machine is chilling in the background, and I'm just about to grab one of the chocolates to re-whisk it and then churn it. The reason it will be re-whisked, let me try and get that in camera, because the cocoa fat, the butter, melts, but the cocoa solid doesn't, it will settle to the bottom. It's not a major problem because you can just turn it back up again and then it will be frozen. So I never really worry about separation or settling in the ice cream. Just going to take that out, just make it easier to pour. It's already not the easiest to pour around the camera. I wouldn't normally bother if the camera wasn't in the way. I've got a bit more flexibility. So re-whisking's easy. I do it in the stand mixer. Just pour the mixture in. Scrape out everything that's in there. And remember, I'm just going to show you the re-whisking and churning process of one of the chocolate ice creams, because it's exactly the same for all of them. I'll scrape out as much as I possibly can, because then I get it as chocolatey as it possibly can be. Maybe I should have used the smaller whisk. Not smaller whisk, smaller spatula. Never mind, too late now. I did see one, it wasn't a spatula, it was like a, the things you get like soups out, ladle. It was a ladle that was flexible so you can get into the corners, which I make a lot of things in a slow cooker. I always get that. You get to the last bit of the curry or the stew or whatever it is you've made. That's about as much as I think I'm getting. By the way, it's on a plate because when I quickly move over to the ice cream machine, I don't want this surface to be dirty because I put a pillow on this surface. And I want to be able to fairly quickly move over there rather than have to pack it all up, move everything, clean it up, and then be able to down. And you're not, I mean, you can't whip it anyway because there's not enough fat percentage, but you're not trying to whip it. All you're trying to do is recombine the ingredients. So it doesn't need to be a high power at all. So I've got a stand mixer that goes up to, I think, 6. It has a setting beyond 6, but it just calls it max. I've only got it between 1 and 2 right now. Just 2. I think that will do nicely. So I am going to strain it. The original recipes did say to strain it. I decided to do it after I've whisked because it gives the most chocolate infusion time. And I'm just going to strain it into the jug that it came in. This is partly why I was trying to get so much out of it. And it's also partly because I want as much ice cream as possible. Okay, right. Onto the plate. This is going to be fun. I really could do with another hand here. So how to do this in a way that some of this may not appear terribly well on camera. And ideally what I would do is scrape that. I really could do with another hand. If I rest that there and sort of actually, sorry, this may now be off camera. I'm just supporting it on my body. Well, that's really not stable. It's not stable at all. Nope, that's an even worse idea. That's gonna have to do. Now, because there are solids that are not going to go through a sieve, I'm going to have to push this a little bit. If you're doing something like making a cake and you've got bits of sugar, for example, that won't unclump, I don't know that that's the technical word for it. That's not the best idea to do because it's still not going to unclump, but it's not the end of the world in an ice cream mixture in a liquid. So it didn't go too bad, actually. I'm not truly pushing it through, though, because what I know has happened here is a few of the solids that aren't going to go through have gathered at the bottom and they're preventing the liquid. So all I'm really doing, try and do it a little bit more on the screen. All I'm really doing is pushing them away so that it lets the liquid go through. It will push some of them through. It's not the end of the world. So I do actually want the chocolate in here. A bit like the coconut ice cream with its little bits of nut. Part of the feature of real chocolate ice cream is you do get the flecks of chocolate. Is this one that didn't fully melt? So in order to remember which one was which, I put the chocolate that I used on top of the jug in the fridge. I think this is the one that I showed you on the video yesterday of making it. I think this is the one that I thought had fully melted and hadn't quite. There's definitely bits of chocolate. Not huge bits, but little bits of chocolate in the sieve there. Right, I think that's as much as we're getting through. Do I want to... I don't want to scrape it, I might just tap. No, it's definitely a bit of chocolate. And there we have the jug, try and bring it in, of chocolate ice cream number 1. I'm going to very quickly move over to the ice cream machine and we'll be churning it momentarily. And here we are, it took me about 45 seconds. It's not like all the chocolate is suddenly going to sink in 45 seconds. The ice cream machine's been chilling for 9 minutes. Do I want this? I might want the spatula back. Let's just go get that back. And then pour in chocolate ice cream number 1. I should pour, I just threw it halfway up the canister, that's annoying. Just creates a bit of a mess to clean up. Remember, this has been thrown everywhere. This is the same one that I threw out of the saucepan as I was pouring it into the jug. Oh, is it better to try and clean that up now? Or let it freeze? It's better to try and clean it up now. Oh dear. That's fine, there was nothing much in it. That was just the jug dropping off of the worktop, which is covered with a mattress, not a mattress, a quilt, by the way. I'm going to try and clean at least some of that up. Otherwise that is going to be messy when it comes to cleaning it up later. That's probably as much as I'm going to get without risking getting paper in my chocolate ice cream. So, where's the lid go? There's the lid. Let's leave that to churn. And having been in, it was a well-chilled ice cream, and having been in the machine, having been chilled for 9 minutes, that will hopefully not take too long. 20 minutes, maybe 25, I reckon. We'll see what time I come back to it on. It's very nearly ready, but whilst it just does another minute or two, I wanted to show you one of my Christmas presents, which is not directly ice cream related, but is certainly very helpful for ice cream. That was just one of my fridge magnets falling off. There we go. That was the Great British Car Journey experience. It's basically a car museum, but I found it really interesting. I'm not actually that into cars. But they have all the stories of the people that own the car, which I found more interesting. Anyway, this is called a Dymo machine. It's essentially a sticky label maker. And when I was a kid, my grandmother had one of these. So there's no electronics in this. All you do is you turn the dial to whatever you want. So I need it to be on P because I'm going to be PS for Pump Street 85. And then just hold in the handle and do that a few times until you've written what you want. You can't delete. So if you make a mistake, oh well, you shouldn't have done that, should you? And at the end, you just press the cut, and out pops your label onto the floor, because it always does. This was like the best toy at my grandmother's house. She had one that was red, and I'm just gonna. It came out like so, and then you just peel off the sticky back into it. I can't really get the camera to focus on that. That's not going so well. There we go. And I'm just going to put that actually on the bottom of the pot, because whilst I do want to know what the ice creams are, I want to be able to test them without knowing which one I'm testing. So that is now there on the bottom of the ice cream container. I'm going for these containers because I have 4 of them. I want them to be identical. Oh, and yes, of course, I did put a Dymo sticker on the Dymo machine itself. And now I believe, having done that, it will be time to get the chocolate ice cream out of the churn. Yeah, that's done. There we go. That is very nicely done. I'd forgotten I'd put the sticker on the bottom of it. I only did it a minute ago. I was thinking, what on earth is that in the bottom of my container? Yeah, that was basically the best toy at my grandmother's house. My grandmother was quite an elderly grandmother. I think she was about 70 when I was born, and I was the first grandchild. So it blows my mind how some people have really young grandparents. I've got a colleague and friend who was a bit concerned she hadn't become a grandmother by 50. And I'm there going, yeah, I was my grandma's first grandchild, and I wasn't born until she was about 70. You've got plenty of time. But she did actually become a grandmother when she was she 50 or was she? No, she was 50. She was 50 when she became a grandmother. That's as much as I'm going to get off of there. I just realised I maybe shouldn't have turned the actual machine off because it carries on chilling if you don't, and I don't really want the ice cream that's in there to melt. I always say I'm not a big fan of chocolate ice cream, but I'm a fan of that's frozen in, which doesn't surprise me given how I messed up getting the mixture in there. Yeah, see, it's all on the side of it. I can't really show you the inside of the ice cream pot, but it's all in there as well, which is why I did want to at least try and clean some of it up before. Where was I? Yes, I always say I don't like chocolate ice cream. And yet I do. I like the way I make chocolate ice cream. I don't like flavours being too strong. I've got a weird mixture of I don't taste some things at all, and other things I taste way too much. And chocolate is in the way too much category. So if you get one of these really, hyper chocolate blast melt, whatever people want to call them, it's too much for me. But if I make it like this, and as you know, this has only got a quite comparatively small percentage of chocolate in it, it really suits me. It's very much still chocolate, but it's not overwhelming chocolate. It's not chocolatey enough for some people, like my mother. But her taste has never really been the same since she had chemo. But saved her life. She is fine. And apart from tasting certain things, she can go about her life as she was, more or less as she was before she had cancer. So you get the good with the bad, don't you? Let's just smooth that down. I think there's enough in there to not need a covering on it. I did mess up slightly on my calculation of cream, by the way. I didn't factor in the slow ice cream, so I am actually shy of about 100 grams of single cream. So I'm going to have to make the next two chocolates in 600 gram batches rather than 750. I've got a strange feeling. I just need to wipe that. There's something to wipe it with. I've got a strange feeling when I originally worked out how much cream to order, I was planning 600 gram batches. So I've got a strange feeling it actually was enough originally, and then I messed it up by changing my mind. There's the lid. That will now go in my newly empty freezer because most things have been moved into the chest freezer in the garage. And then that's all you're going to see of the churning process. But I have another one. I've got an ice cream machine to clean, and then have another one to churn. And then later on, I've got 2 more ice creams to make. So it's a busy day of ice cream for me. And then tomorrow, I'll churn the other 2. And then I'll probably test them all out the day after that. I am hoping to get this video out before New Year, if all goes to plan. So I will see you back for testing of 4 chocolate ice creams. And now it's time for a breakfast tasting of all of the chocolate ice creams. Not really a breakfast food, but it is Twixtmas. It's that bit between Christmas and New Year where it's not quite festive, you're not really Christmassy, but you are still opening the fridge and going, leftover profiteroles and salmon, that sounds like a main meal. All of them have been frozen for at least an overnight. 2 of them would have been frozen for 2 overnight, but I don't know which ones. I got them out of the freezer, plunked them down, and I have no idea which one's which anymore. I also have, I think, off screen, let me bring it in, a glass of water to cleanse the palate in between them. So let's get started with number 1. Looks nice and chocolatey. You can see the flecks in it. Not a bad texture, not the softest I've had, but not hard. That was nice. Cover it back up. No, let's not cover it back up. I might have to do this how I pick glasses. You try on one pair, and you kind of use that as your benchmark, and the next pair you try and you go, do I like this pair more than I like that pair? Yes, let's swap those around. Even so, I still end up with about 20, and a friend who's telling me not to buy ones that I then go and buy. So number 2, I think it's slightly softer, but not significantly so. I didn't close my palate. Tastes slightly nicer on the mouth, that one. Taste is much the same, but I think that one's less great, not even grainy. It feels smoother. Number 2. Number 3. Looks slightly darker. Which spoon did I use for that one? Right, let's cleanse my palate. Number 3 is definitely softer. And to be fair, I'm getting to it later on. Maybe it's just defrosting. That is strong chocolate. But mind, they've all got the same amount of actual chocolate in them. That one tastes more chocolatey. I think so far we've got an order. That one was better than that one, and this one's better than this one. Oh, I can actually see little ice crystals on this one. Maybe I'm just catching it in the right light. No, there are definitely little ice crystals on the top of that one. That's not softer. It's not hard, but it's not as soft as that one was. But also really chocolatey. That one's last. I think that one's third and that one's second. Let me just double check. Yep, that one's third. I think that one's second. I think that one's second and that one's first. Again, just double check. These ones are hard to call. Really hard to call. I suppose they could be joint first. That one wins on texture, just about. Hardly anything between those two. So I'm going to put the lids back on. And I wouldn't be disappointed if you gave me a scoop of any of them. But, right, so, fourth place, we had PS85, so that's Pump Street 85% cocoa. Second place is Tosier 80%. So when you put the T80 and T90, it sounds like I'm naming them after Power Armour. Fallout reference there for you. Second place was PS100, Pump Street 100% cocoa. That means this one must be the Tosier 90. And indeed it is, the Tosier 90. So I said right at the beginning, I do have a mild bias towards the Tosier, and it did eventually win, but there was hardly anything between those two. I could have gone the other way. It came down just fractionally smoother in texture, which I think would be because it had a little bit of more sugar in that one than that one. And sugar will, of course, hold a bit more water, therefore you get slightly softer. But there was hardly anything between those. I put one of the Tosiers third. I went pump, Tosier, pump, Tosier. Did it go in? It went in. Did it go in cocoa? No, it didn't, because that was 85 and that was 80. But the high, yeah, no, it didn't go in cocoa. 85, 90, no. 85, 80, 190. So no, we didn't go in cocoa order. As I said, I wouldn't have been disappointed with any of them. They all worked really nicely. That one just about clenched it. But if I couldn't get that one and I got that chocolate, I'd have been perfectly happy with that. So next week, I do already know this is probably going to be the last ice cream video of this year. I do know what's coming next though, and I'm probably going to start filming it later on today. I need to get a couple of bits ready first. And so I'm hoping to have it out on New Year's Day itself. It'll be a Happy New Year video. And then from then on, I take it as it comes and do what I feel like and what feels right for the season and the time that I'm doing it. So I hope you'll join me in 2025 for more of these videos.